Hello everyone, it's Marie and welcome to another video. So today I thought I'd give you a culture shocks video, and this is a more themed culture shocks video. This is a driving culture shocks video because I realised since driving in New Zealand that there's tons of differences between driving in New Zealand compared to driving in England where I'm from. So it's kind of weird because you would assume that driving in New Zealand is very similar to the UK. I mean, we drive on the same side of the road here as you do in the UK, so that's not a big difference like it is in most of the world. And as a whole, a lot of the road laws and rules here in New Zealand are very similar to those in the UK. But there are lots of subtle differences that I've really noticed since driving here that have been so different to what I'm used to back in the UK. So I'm just going to list them out one at a time. Let's go. So the first big difference, obviously, is that here they use kilometres and not miles. So your standard speed limit in the streets here would be like 50 kilometres an hour, whereas in the UK, in the streets, it would be like 30 miles an hour. The motorways and highways here would be like 110 kilometres an hour, whereas in the UK, it's like 70 miles an hour. Same with distances, no one uses miles here, they use Ks, kilometres. It's just interesting having that difference. Now I'm totally programmed with kilometres and I just find myself using kilometres automatically now. I don't really even think about miles. So when I go back to the UK, I'm sure I'll just reconvert and it'll be like a reverse culture shock. But as of right now, I'm totally familiarised with kilometres. It's like miles never existed, but it's just weird. It was weird at first getting used to kilometres versus miles. So the next difference that I'm talking about, I actually mentioned in my living costs of New Zealand video. I'll link it up here. In that video, I talked about how car insurance here is so cheap. It's so cheap compared to the UK, like phenomenally cheap. Like my car insurance costs me $12 a month for third party. $12 a month, that's like £7 a month. For car insurance. You could never pay that in the UK. In the UK, I had like 7 years no claims and I paid like £450 a year. Here it's less than like $120 a year. I mean, it's not even fathomable how cheap it is for car insurance here compared to the UK. And also, car insurance isn't actually a legal requirement here. In the UK, you need to legally have car insurance. If you don't, you could get fined. Whereas here, you don't actually legally need it. A lot of people, in fact, I know tons of people that just drive around without any car insurance. Now, the downside to that is if you don't have third party at least, and you crash into someone or whatever, you have to pay out of your pocket, maybe in installments, and your insurance company won't. So you just have to hope you don't crash into anyone. Because if you do crash into someone and you can't pay it, obviously you're kind of screwed. So I have car insurance because for like $12 a month, I'm not gonna complain. But a lot of people just don't have it here. So yeah, it's not a legal requirement, which I thought was really interesting. So another thing that I found here with petrol stations is that a lot of the time you have to prepay for your petrol before you put it in your car. So in the UK, it's very rare that you have to go into the garage or pay with your card before you put the petrol in. Normally you'll just go up to the pump, you put your petrol in your car, and then you go in and pay, or you pay like with your card at the machine. Whereas here, I mean, there are some machines, there are some petrol stations where you can put your fuel in first and then you go in and pay, or you pay at the pump. But most places here, they expect you to pay before you put the petrol in. So that's a bit of a difference because in the UK you really don't have to do that. You normally put your petrol in first. Here you normally, like I'd say 9 times out of 10 here, you have to pay first. So now it's just become normal for me to pay before I put the petrol in because it's just what's expected here. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. It's definitely different to what I'm used to in the UK. Another thing that I found here is that sometimes you have like a person that puts your petrol in for you. In the UK, that's something I never encountered ever in my whole driving life. Whereas here, I've had it happen like 3 or 4 times where you drive up to a petrol station and the guy would say, "How much do you need?" And you tell him how much you need and then he puts it in for you. And then you go pay at the counter while he's filling up your car. I wouldn't say it's like totally common. Most of the time I fill it up myself, but there's been a lot of times, like 4 times now, where I've had someone do it for me. Whereas in the UK I never had that happen in like the years that I drove. So yeah, that's just a bit of a difference that is kind of nice but also kind of weird because I'm not used to it, but yeah, that's one thing. So another difference here is that in New Zealand they have much like smaller and slower roads, so you know the speed limit is lower on most roads here. Like you get a few roads that are like 110 kilometers an hour, which is almost the equivalent to a 70 mile an hour in the UK, which is what most of our motorways and dual carriageways are. But here, most roads are like 100 k's, which is like 60 miles an hour. And here you find only really the toll roads or the big highways are 110. You also just don't have as many big roads here. Like for example in the UK, it's not uncommon to have big 3-lane motorways. Sometimes we even have 4 lanes on a motorway in the UK. Like, we have big motorways. Like, I didn't realise how many and how big our motorways were until I came here and realised, you know, generally most roads are single carriageway, dual carriageway at most. In fact, I don't think I've seen a 3-lane motorway here yet in New Zealand, and I was around Auckland as well, and I don't know if I saw any of them around Auckland either. So yeah, the roads are much tinier here. They're kind of cute in a lot of ways. They're just much smaller, much simpler. And I guess you just don't need the big roads because the population here, the people on the road, there's just not so many people to take up the roads here. While we're talking about motorways and toll roads, that's another thing I noticed here that we don't have so much of in the UK. Here we have lots of toll roads, especially in Tauranga. There's roads where you would go on like the highway, the motorway, and it would be a toll road, and you would pay like $2 each time you go through the toll, and you basically pay it online. Whereas in the UK, I mean, we have a few, like we have the Dartford Tunnel, and we have a toll road around Birmingham, I think it is. So we do have some toll roads in the UK, but mostly they're just like the newest roads, and they're only a toll for a certain amount of time or something. Like, we do have some in the UK, but it's not such a common thing. Whereas here, it seems like every road that's a big highway is a toll road and you have to pay for it. So I don't know, but yeah, that's just something that's a little different as well that I'm not used to. I mean, I'm kind of used to just paying $2 every time I go down a big road here now, or I avoid the toll by going another side roadway. But that's not something I really had to think about in the UK because all our motorways are pretty much free, whereas here it seems any big motorway you normally have to pay for, which I find kind of interesting. But I don't know what it's like around the whole island. I'm just talking about what I've experienced here in Tauranga and in Auckland. So another big difference for me was driving an automatic car. I know this might be hard to believe, but it wasn't until I came here to New Zealand that I drove my first automatic car. I'm 25 years old, and the first time I drove an automatic car was literally last month. I don't know anyone that just got an automatic only licence in England. As far as I'm aware, everyone drives a manual, at least when they're learning, and they always can drive a manual. I mean, there are some people that have automatic cars in the UK, but it's not really common. I think most people would drive a manual, whereas here, it seems like automatics are like what most people have. I kind of like it though. I kind of feel like now when I go back to the UK I'm going to try and get myself an automatic car because it's just so much easier. Like, you don't have to think about anything. I totally see why people like driving automatics now because they're so easy, but until I started driving one I never really understood. I always just thought manual was the only way you go. So yeah, it's been a cool culture shock, that one. I really like that one. So one big difference that really freaked me out when I first came here is the merging lanes here. So obviously we have normal merging lanes here on motorways, but they also have weird merging lanes where you have to merge from the wrong side of the road. And now I'm kind of used to it, but at first it confused the hell out of me. Like, sometimes you will go around a roundabout and then you will go like, so for example, this is the lanes. There's like 2 lanes on a motorway. Okay, you got 2 lanes. Normally you would merge from this side. So the cars are going in that direction and you would merge in this side. Sometimes here you merge from the wrong side, so you're merging onto the fast lane. And that is never something I ever encountered in the UK. Or even when I was like being driven around Europe in buses and stuff, I never encountered that. So I just find that so weird. I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but you've got a motorway, right? And you've got like 2 lanes. And we're both going in this direction, right? Normally you merge down onto this side and then you go into the slow lane and then you can go into the fast lane if you want. Well here, sometimes you have to merge down the side into the fast lane. So you have to merge looking over your left shoulder, which is just weird. Another thing similar is kind of the same. Like, sometimes you get to like a T-junction where you can go that way or you can go that way, but there's like a barrier in the middle of the road. So when you go right, you have to go along the barrier, and it's like you're driving on the wrong side of the road, and then you have to go around the barrier and merge onto the road, like going that way. It's just weird. Like, you feel like you're driving on the wrong side of the road quite a lot. It's really confusing. I'm getting used to it now. Like, now I totally am cool with it, but when I first started driving here, I used to find that so weird. Just the concept of merging onto the fast lane is just really weird for me. It's not something you do in the UK. Also, kind of along the same lines as that, another difference I found here is that a lot of people undertake here. Now, I know that you're not technically supposed to, because I hear on the radio they say that you should use the overtaking lane only for overtaking and then go back in. But that's not really how it works here. I mean, people are allowed legally to undertake here. At least I think they are, because they all do it. In the UK, it's very rare you find people undertaking unless it's slow moving traffic, and it's a very strict rule in the UK. Like, you're taught right from the beginning you never undertake because it can cause crashes, because people don't expect people to undertake. If you want to go past someone, you go into the overtaking lane, you go past, and then you get yourself back. That's how it works in the UK. Here, people undertake all the time. Like, if you're too slow for them, they'll just undertake you. It's just such a common thing for people to undertake all the time and drive faster in the slow lane or whatever. Like, it's just so common here for undertaking. So that's something I've had to kind of keep my eye out for and be more aware of when driving, that people will just zoom past you in the slow lane and undertake you, because that's not something that really happens in the UK often. If it does, people aren't happy about it because it shouldn't be done. Whereas here, I feel like even if you're not supposed to, people do it anyway, and I don't think there's like a law against it or anything. So yeah, I thought that's something I've definitely had to be more conscious of since I've been here. So another small difference here is, so in the UK you have an MOT. Here we have a W.O.F, which is a warrant of fitness. And in the UK, generally when you do your MOT, you would get a 1 year, and that means it's basically road safe. Whereas here, it's not common for you to get 1 year of warrant of fitness. Usually you'll get it in 6 months increments, if that makes sense. Whereas in the UK, I've never heard of it being every 6 months. I think it's only once a year. I think you can do cars that are young for a year here, but if they're like past a certain age, it can only be 6 months at a time. Okay, so the last one, this is just kind of relevant because it's what I experienced a few weeks ago. My car recently broke down and I had to tow my own car from work. I towed my car using Andy's van and I towed my car home. In the UK, that's not something I would have been allowed to do, because in the UK, if you passed your licence after a certain year, you now have to, so basically all new drivers and all drivers that pass their licence after a certain year, they have to apply for like a towing licence now. So if you want to tow a trailer or a caravan or a car, in the UK you have to apply for a licence for that now. Whereas here, I was able to legally tow my car home, and it's fine, you can tow your car at any point here. You don't have to get a special licence to tow a car here. So I thought that was really cool. And also in the UK, towing ropes, or at least I've been told, I hope I'm not wrong on this, I've been told that tow ropes in the UK are no longer legal. You have to now have a tow bar, because tow ropes can snap, and I found that when I was towing my car. The tow ropes actually snapped twice. So yeah, so whereas here you can use tow ropes, whereas in the UK they're banned, or at least I think they're banned. If they're not banned, let me know if I'm wrong, but I've been told that they're no longer legal to use now in the UK. You have to use a bar. So yeah, that was just a small one, but yeah, there are just some differences I found about driving here in New Zealand compared to the UK. It's weird because I've been trying to make culture shock videos for, you know, England versus New Zealand, and I found that majority of my culture shocks were driving related, so I just thought I would throw together all my culture shocks into a big driving video, because I feel like there's more driving culture shocks than any of the culture shocks so far. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below. Are there any big driving culture shocks you've found if you've ever driven abroad or driven in another country, or just in general, what do you find different in New Zealand compared to in your country? So yeah, I'm just going to end this here. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video, and don't forget to subscribe to see more videos about backpacking New Zealand, casual, you know, work here, travelling solo, all that kind of stuff. So, and also digital nomad life. You know, I make videos about working online and all that kind of stuff as well. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.